here we are. We're live.
All right.
Sorry, everyone. I was trying to get a chat worked out, and I still have no clue how to get my chat enabled. Even creating the event on YouTube, enable comments is clicked everywhere, but still not happening.
Yeah,
So,
that's weird.
Yeah.
Oh well. So usually you can go to YouTube, create an event, and then in advanced settings, and the first tab there says enable live chat. And if you click it, usually that enables the live chat.
Yeah. This is a conversation between me and Helena. I've enjoyed watching Helena for a long time, even before I got going into Hangouts this past year. I saw her on a couple of shows that I watched, and I've always been impressed with your both your curiosity and your intelligence, and your jumping in with these big guns who scare the crap out of me.
Wait.
And you ask them extremely difficult, poignant questions.
Really?
You hold their feet to the fire for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad my camera's off because I'm blushing.
So
well, let me just ask you something real quick. So how long did it take you? Because for me, you suddenly just appeared, and it wasn't very long ago, right? So how long did it take you to sort of, how long was your lurking period? Because mine was pretty long.
I lurked for a good 1.5 to 2 years.
That's just about how long I lurked.
Yeah. I said this in a previous Hangout that I came here through the pre-sup arguments I was getting from my friends, and I think I found the place with there was a Bob Graves and I think it was Greg Brahe.
Greg Brahe, and Dr. Jones.
Yeah, and they had a conversation, I think, with Eric.
Eric Hovind.
Eric Hovind, right.
Mm-hmm. And I think also, that was, of course, Sci-10, right?
Right, yes, that's right. And I think that was, I don't know that Sci-10 was in that conversation, but they had, or maybe he was. But that was I want to say that was the crack that I entered through. I think I stumbled over Ozzy's Hangouts that way. And then was watching a Magic Sandwich Show and a number of other like Deeper Than Dogma. And there was a long period of lurking, taking in information. I myself have been always active in discussions and have had an active YouTube or Facebook account with pretty heavy discussions going on constantly. Even now, this week, there was more. So those have been going on for years and years and years. And I always try to keep kind of a civil discourse going with multiple people, a lot of people who have never met before. They know me, but they don't know each other, and have become accustomed to talking about issues with each other. We just had an abortion thread going on pretty heavily. And I try to get people talking, and I enjoy talking to people. And as long as we can keep it civil and constructive, we can learn to at least understand each other. And so that's why I migrated into the Google Plus community and YouTube, and through comments, I engaged with Ozzy a couple of times. There was another gentleman that we were talking with, who I did a couple Hangouts with him, and that's kind of what hooked me into Hangouts. So yeah, it's been kind of a long, slow dipping my toes in, and then a little bit further. So, but how did you get here?
Same kind of idea, but just happened a little earlier, right? So I don't know. If you try to reconstruct something after the fact, you're going to get stuff wrong. But to the best of my ability, so okay, let me think. Okay, let me see here. There are many, many, many ideas and thoughts and opinions I have that I have just never, ever, 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 ever said out loud, ever. And one of them was sort of surrounding atheism. It just was something I just never, ever spoke about. Just didn't, right? Because, it's what was the point? And then this is the way I think it happened. So I was using YouTube, but that was in connection with my daughter. And so we were sharing, the people that she liked, and we would watch things together and things like that. Well, so as she became a teenager, she wanted less and less of that. but But I was like, what is this crazy YouTube thing? Maybe there's something I could enjoy. And
Right.
and this is the way I think it happened. And I could be wrong, but I think I either watched a rerun or something where Richard Dawkins was on TV. And the reason I think I could be wrong is that I think that his God delusion was really too early for this to be the right memory. But seems to be the way I remember it, right? I think he was talking about the God delusion, and I remember thinking, oh my God, don't tell me the guy who wrote The Selfish Gene is a Christian, and now he's writing a Christian book, right? And I just about turned it off. And then it turned out, oh, wait a second, this book is not a Christian book.
You thought the God delusion was the title of a Christian novel?
I thought that the guy that I liked, because I'd read The Selfish Gene, right, was now, making some kind of case for Christianity. And so I think then the next day, and this is again with all the caveats of understanding how memory is false, right? But this is sort of how I think it happened. So then the next day I went on YouTube because I had extra time and I wasn't doing anything with my daughter because she was turning into a teenager, but I still like this YouTube thing, right? So I think the first thing I did was look for things about him, and I quickly found Hitchens. So, and then I was like, oh my God, there are books about this, right? But they were older books, so it must have been a rerun or something, I don't know. But so then I was like, I can't believe people are actually discussing this. And so then I read God is Not Great, and I thought it was a great book. And then after I read God is Not Great, then I read Dawkins's contribution. And then, of course, because of the Horseman videos, that led me to Harris and Dennett. And then, how on the sidebar on YouTube, it's like, you might like. And that clicked me on to these sort of the more local people. And I was just sort of enjoying that. And then all of a sudden one day I opened YouTube and it was like, you must have a Google Plus account. You cannot comment. And I was like, what? What do you mean I can't comment? They're like, please open a Google Plus account. So that was the thing. So then I was just, people talk about my username and they're like, wow, that's a pretty cute username, right? Because it's Helena Handbaskit. That just happened by accident. I was literally on the toilet, shocked that I couldn't make a comment unless I created an entity, right? So that happened while I was sitting on the toilet. It was like, because I first put in, I don't know, I think what I put in was, as my first name, Google, and then as my last name, ruined my YouTube, because I was really angry. So I thought my name could be Google ruined my YouTube. And then I got an error, like, that doesn't sound like a real name. You can enter that, but we're going to look at it. And if it's not a real name, you'll be banned forever, that kind of a warning. So I was like, okay, I need a new name. I need a real sounding name. Helen. But then what last name? And then it just sort of just like, oh, what about Helena? And then Handbaskit as the last name. So, and then after that,
just as a side note, the problem I have with your name is it's shared with, I believe, if I do a YouTube search on Helena Handbaskit, I believe I get a transsexual performer. I'm not sure.
I think there's a famous Helena Handbaskit, but that's Basket with the proper E, right?
And I believe I've actually seen that performer live.
Oh, well, there you go. Yes. So you can call me responsible for your, I don't know, expansion of performance arts.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I do remember that Helena Handbaskit, properly spelled, was already taken, but luckily, IT at the end of basket was not taken, and they thought it was a real name because the first name was Helena. So it got me in, and then I was like, okay, well, so all right. So then I used as the email. Google ruined my YouTube, or Google is ruining my YouTube, or something. Right, so my literal introduction, this is a side thing. I then learned sort of how, I got all my sort of friends, my online friends, therefore, through Google Plus. So now that Google Plus is dismantling everything, I'm worried I'm going to lose all those people.
Yeah.
Right? But so so then I started watching all the debates and everything, and I think that the first sort of local people that I noticed was fundamentally flawed. And that was the first time I had sort of watched a casual video conference or audio conference. And so for a while, I just sort of got to know the people involved in fundamentally flawed, because I would turn it on as I fell asleep.
Right.
So, and then I don't quite remember, but there was, after that, sort of the normal, you start to learn the people, and then because there was this Google Plus, I could click on their Google Plus profile and add them to circles and crap like that. And so I feel like I sort of quickly got to know who everybody was. But I think it was about 6 months before I literally posted a comment as Helena Handbaskit.
So how did you end up? I know that you know Ozzy, and you've interacted on
New Covenant Group.
Have you been on Deep Thought before?
I don't know if I've been on Deep Thought. I think maybe
yeah.
in the after shows. So my first actual appearance was Magic Sandwich Show. And I think that was the first time I saw Ozzy. And I think that Ozzy says that that's one of the first times he actually interacted. Right. So even though I've been watching New Covenant Group, I think Fundamentally Flawed was gone by then. But there was this Magic Sandwich Show that I'd been watching, and I was like, there was some things going on between my husband and I about atheism versus agnosticism, right? And induction. And so I thought, you know what? I've got a question I think would fit for a Magic Sandwich Show. So I'm just gonna friggin' do it. Right? But that meant then that I had to create a separate Skype account with Helena Handbaskit. And then a couple of months later, I had to create a separate Facebook account, neither of which I ever look at, ever. But so I did that. So that was my first appearance, was sort of, I think my husband's hiding behind the problem of induction because he's actually an atheist, but he doesn't feel comfortable calling himself an atheist. And so he wants to say he's an agnostic, but that doesn't fit, blah, blah, blah. So that was my first one. That was my first introduction.
How did you, so what in the previous to, what is your, over the course of your life, were you ever religious? Did you ever have any type of, were you brought up in a faith or anything like that? What's kind of your background prior to all this?
So, I mean, that's going to depend on whether or not you consider that my previous beliefs count as Christian or not.
Right.
We'll
so
if somebody who's fundamental,
we'll assume that it does in the same sense that I was a Christian, but many of my friends would say I was never a Christian, right? So
exactly. That's right. So I mean, I would imagine most Christians, or at least most Google Plus Christians, would say, Helena, you were never a fucking Christian, so shut up, right? So for me, it was, if there was a deconversion, it was very, very, very early compared to typical deconversions. And you can't really pinpoint because stuff goes on all along, but you can kind of pinpoint your last straw. So my last straw was the summer between 2nd grade and 3rd grade.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that summer, so, I mean, I'm sure this stuff was boiling, right? And I have earlier memories where watching my parents' reaction didn't match. Like, I remember we were on some vacation, and, we were spelunking, and we came across, I don't know if it was staged or not, and this memory could be all foggy because it's a pretty early memory, but we came across skulls and bones and shells. And I remember being very excited and saying to both parents, hey, look, there's shells here. There's shells. And they looked at me like, okay. And I was like, so maybe, this could show that there was a flood because you've got shells and there's no ocean anywhere, right? And so rather than the response, and they were both at least professing Christians, right? Rather than a sort of, well, that's a good idea, or, oh yeah, that's kind of a good point, or any kind of encouragement that is like, hey kid, your reasoning is good, right? I saw them exchange a look like, uh-oh, what are we going to do about this? Right? Right? And they're both, really educated, right? Like, and my dad used to do basic brain research. And so he's a psychiatrist, but he didn't go into academics, although he was supported by a university. He does basic brain research, or used to do basic brain research. And my mom's is similar, right? So they're sort of sciencey types, but yet my mom's from France, and so there's a strong Catholic influence. She continues to be a believer. My dad, he just thinks it's kind of wrong to say he doesn't believe, I think. I don't know. It's hard to say. But so there were little things like that where I thought I had found sort of like childish proof for the stories that were being given to me. And I'd look up at my parents, and they'd exchange these uh-oh looks that I caught, right? So that probably started the bubbling, right? But the summer between second and third grade, you spend your contemplation time, right? And so I was thinking about Jesus and sort of imagining superhero type things. Like, if I had been there, I would have run up and just convinced everybody that you had to take him down, that kind of, how you do when you're kids, right? And then I thought, and I remember thinking there were two issues. The first one was, you're not supposed to be jealous, right? Or you're not supposed to covet what other people have, right? And so I was sort of ruminating on that, and then also going, well, what could heaven actually be? And so a connection was made. I remember thinking about this in school, and this was during second grade, going like, wait a second, this promise of heaven, this is weird, because it's like God's going, don't be jealous, and if you aren't, look at all the stuff you'll get. And that seemed strange to me. And right, so there was that I was like, maybe I'm just not thinking about it right. And then the second straw, and I think this is probably the real straw, was that this whole sacrifice and blood and all that stuff about how, a bloody murder is a good thing and was required, and also means that now you're free and you're saved, and all these glorious things around this human sacrifice. And I didn't understand. So I went around, because living where I lived, there were plenty of churches within walking distance, right? But the main thing was, that summer, I was determined to try to figure out the connection between Jesus dying and how it is that means something good, right? So how does Jesus dying save us? I don't get that. And it became pretty clear. So I would go to church and, knock on the door.
Wait, can you clarify? This is still second, third grade, or when is?
Yeah, this is the sort of like the mini journey that I had the summer between second and third grade.
Wow.
Right. So I would walk to the various churches, right? Because my parents wouldn't tell me, and none of the adults I trusted would tell me. They were keeping that a secret. Mm-hmm. They would say something like, "Oh, you're too young. Why are you bothering with that?" They were brushing off the question, and that was very curious. Right, and very bizarre, right? So all of these, they were sort of lighthearted, loving, friendly, joyous religions, and they didn't want to tell me. So I was in the dark about that. Like, what is with this dying thing, right? So I went to the local Catholic church, and the priest was like, you know what? Why don't you go ask someone else? And that was sort of the pattern, right? And I never did find out. Wow. No one told me about, I don't remember the terms like vicarious redemption or the scapegoating idea. No one would tell me it. They all said, you know what, you're too young to understand this, but I was very suspicious.
They're probably still in shock from a what, an 8-year-old showing up at their door asking these questions.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, right? I mean, I think I got a lot of bizarre looks, right? But you know, I always get bizarre looks, so that didn't bother me any.
You weren't wearing like a really hot pink shirt, were you?
Listen, I'm still wearing the hot pink shirt today. I haven't bothered to change my shirt. Let me show here. I'm going to turn on the. Okay, be ready to be blinded because you know I've got camera things. All right, you ready?
People
Here it goes.
Wait. People might want to dim their screens for a moment. You don't want any permanent burn-ins to occur.
Here's the shirt. Can you see it?
Oh my gosh! It's not only that; it's the purple and the greens and everything.
Well, I thought that would cover it. So if I had to go online, the vibrant colors wouldn't bother you. I do wear a lot of vibrant colors. Mm-hmm. So anyway, no, I don't think that was it because at the time my mother was dressing me. But so I think that was it. So by the end of that, where I really tried hard and the grown-ups would not acknowledge me, I was like, you know what? This is really fishy. There's something going on here that's fake, right? So it was late July. I really remember this. I'm pretty sure this is right. It was late July. And I decided I'm going to read the Bible for myself. God damn it.
God damn it. God damn it. I'm going to read the Bible.
That was my feeling. And so I read the whole thing as best I could. I couldn't understand anything. But the little bits and pieces that I could understand just were like, this doesn't make any sense. This cannot be divine.
What was your church? I guess at that point, were you guys going? Were you like Catholic going on Sundays, or what was your experience of Christianity?
Okay, so it was Episcopalian. So very gentle, very humanistic.
Were your parents? Would they go every Sunday, or was it? Oh, okay.
Yep. Every Sunday. And a nice leader, I don't remember, I think they called them reverend, maybe, I don't think the word pastor is right, and I don't think the word priest is right. I think it was reverend. He was wonderful. He wouldn't talk to me about that particular issue, and I really listened, like, oh, are they going to bring it up? Are they going to bring it up? No, they gloss over it.
Yeah,
right?
I was Roman Catholic. I was even an altar boy, I think probably for like 6 years or something.
Oh my God, I totally did that. Like I rang the bell and all that stuff. Yes.
Yeah, but the thing is that I was brain dead in there. I wasn't a brain dead kid. I was totally I was I asked a lot of questions and I thought about things, but for whatever reason, when I was in there, I didn't. I look back at it and I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking about at the time. I don't know. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder what you were thinking, right? Yeah. Maybe you were
well, I think for me it was, I've talked about this a little bit before, but I was going with my family and it was a different experience for me. It was very much just part of what we did. And that was from my earliest memories. I remember I have photos of my dad holding me in church, and I remember I'd come home and play afterward, and it was just kind of part of my weekly routine, and it was very important to as a time with my family, and with my and I always sat next to my father. I remember playing. He would be praying and have his eyes closed, and I'd be playing with his hands or whatever. So I have a lot of memories about that.
Right.
But I never thought about, and I even went to catechism and got confirmed and everything, and never thought about any of that stuff. And I ended up having another, when I was in Ohio, I had a college experience that was very much more about the underlying theology and Bible study and whatnot. But I didn't think about any of that growing up. And I've said before that my father.
I just can't believe that. What do you mean you never thought? You went to you did a catechism and it never occurred to you to think?
I was a clown. So I was no. So I was a class clown. I went afterwards and I goofed around, and it was just like the same way I treated church or school.
Okay.
So my Monday afternoons were what do we call it? It was the classes that you're supposed to be taking the whole time. You go every Monday. And it's essentially like another hour of school or whatever, but you have workbooks you work through, and and they're trying to teach you moral lessons, and there's multiple choice. But I don't remember any of that, and I don't remember what the lessons were about, or if anybody was teaching them. It's a very foggy memory. But I was basically just clowning around with my friends during that time. So, and when I was an altar boy, I don't know what the reasoning was behind it. I don't know that I really gave it much thought. So, I enjoyed doing weddings and funerals. I guess I did more weddings. I don't know if I did any funerals, but I definitely got tips. So
really?
Yes. It was always good. It was a good money-making venture. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that summer between second and third grade, so I went over to the Catholics because there was reverence given to the Catholics from the Episcopalians. So I think I thought maybe these guys will be more honest with me, right? And there was also there was a Catholic church like 5 feet away, but they weren't any better. And then I even went over to, there was another temple that was almost across the street, and they were like, kid, get out of here, right? Like, we don't even come here. So you're opening a can of worms.
They probably saw you walking around. There's probably stories about you had spread, about this 8-year-old giving religion a hard time.
Who knows? I really wasn't giving it a hard time at the time. I just thought that this should be easily explained. Why I could feel that they were hiding something, but no one would tell me what they were hiding, right? Yeah. So anyway,
that's really amazing. I'm really I've never heard anyone articulate an interest at that age. My brother, I'm not sure if he was. He's an atheist, and he's been an atheist since I have to imagine early high school was when it happened. And I'm not sure if that's just when he got I'm sure he's told me before, but I'm not sure if that was the moment when he became, an atheist. I think he probably had that for a long time and wasn't coming forward with it, because honestly, when he stopped going to church and I found out that he no longer believed in God, it was a really dark thing for me. Like, it really was off-putting to me. Wow. that he was, the rest of our family went, and it was going to upset mom, and it was, and I didn't know any atheists, right? I didn't have any type of experience like that, so that was very, very dark and bizarre to me. So
interesting.
But I was probably in my early teens at that point. I was like maybe 10 or 11 at that point. So it was, yeah. Anyway.
So meanwhile, my own brother, he's real character. I mean, he is a character, it's like he never thinks about these issues at all. But like to the point that he I hope he never sees this. But like
older or younger brother?
He's older. Okay. His religious affiliation varies according to the woman he's interested in. So literally, he'll be a Southern Baptist as long as he's going with the Southern Baptist, or married to, right? Then he'll be a Methodist because, somebody he's interested in is a Methodist, so suddenly he's a Methodist. And then he'll be a Lutheran because she's a Lutheran, right?
So so Christian opportunist.
Well, to me, it means that he's not taking any of this seriously. So you would think that he would understand my side, if you will, at least a little, right? Because it looks for all intents and purposes, when you look at him from the outside, he doesn't take belief seriously. I mean, how can he jump from, no swearing and no dancing to, drinking is fine, right? I mean, without any sort of reconciliation about what God really must want, or what God really must mean, or what is God, or any of those kinds of things, right?
Is it always a Christian denomination, or does he ever go to like a Universalist church or anything like that, or is it always within the denominations, within the Protestant denominations?
Right. So far it's been within the Protestant denominations, but I think that is perhaps a matter of circumstance, right? Like, suppose he fell in love with a Jewish person, he would definitely go to a temple.
Really?
Absolutely. I mean, I would bet on that. He would have no problem going.
He's not gonna let God get in the way of his love.
There you go, right? And I think that's admirable, right? He loves people. There's something about him that is absolutely beautiful. Mm-hmm. But it's not that he thinks about God very carefully. Mm-hmm. So I would think that he would be fine with whatever position I happen to hold. Mm-hmm. But oh my God, if I bring it up, he is just absolutely outraged. Like outraged to the extreme. Like he gets incredibly inflamed. And that's sort of the way he is anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So, but he just will not even, he won't even let me in the house if I dare speak about it. So that's weird to me. That's really strange.
Wow. So when you, after that period, then I assume that as you went on into middle school or high school, you were atheist at that point. You considered yourself atheist, or were you agnostic, or how did it progress, I guess?
I think, and again, you're asking me to reconstruct way early, right? But I think that I didn't have this agnostic phase. I think probably I went straight from believing, but and to thinking this just doesn't make any sense. This is silly, right? And then I sort of lived with that underneath for a very, very long time. And then I guess it was maybe middle school or perhaps early high school when I sort of looked at it again on purpose. And this agnostic position sort of came into my mind as a possibility. But I think that I relatively quickly dismissed literal agnosticism. But I think there was maybe a couple of months, maybe longer than that, where I was like, I guess I could say I believe in God, but I could do a woo thing about God and say there might be some force, or because we're all connected in terms of energy, maybe God is a positive energy, and I'd be willing to call that God, right? But that just went away very quickly. So I entertained that possibility, but it also went away very quickly. Mm-hmm. The thing is, this is the thing that's weird about me, and this is why I think I kind of am so attracted to this idea of hangouts. It's that I never voiced any of this. I never said a word to anyone when I was younger, all the way up until I made the handle Helena Handbaskit.
Right.
So I literally, I mean this for sure, literally never uttered a noise about it.
That's really, especially, I think that if you hadn't told me the story about you in second and third grade, I would have understood that. But the tenacity with which you were looking into it at that young age, and how clearly it was important to you to have good answers for these things that you were being told, and to then not discuss it, or did it ever come up where people? Did you ever have a period in your life where you had a friend who was engaged in, and you'd share your own opinions about it, or was it just completely all not discussed, I guess?
It was not discussed. And I think, maybe it was because I was kind of young to sort of come to a conclusion like that, right? So even after that time, I'd spend the night at a Jewish friend, and we'd go to temple. Right. And my parents were like, oh, that's fabulous. Right. I love that you're being exposed. Right. And I said, nothing. Right. So I can't explain that. I don't know why. I could give you psychoanalytic reasons, but they would just be speculation and, maybe too personal and probably wrong. Right. So, I think that there's something with my family dynamic where I was discouraged from speaking out and all that kind of bullshit, right? And that's all possibly true, but irrelevant. I think maybe I just, well, who knows why? I just think that I just figured it was better to just not say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't make any difference. Doesn't make any difference. This is how I think I thought as a kid. It doesn't make any difference that I voice what I think about something. It's not going to change anybody, and it's just going to cause a lot of hoopla. So just, keep it to yourself. Besides, everybody's an idiot anyway. That kind of creeped in on occasion.
Wow.
Perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's probably an older interpretation. Like, that probably happened when I was older.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when I was younger, it was like, you're going to get in trouble or something like that. I have no idea. But I just sort of, without even realizing it, decided that was one of the things that you just sort of smile and nod about. And then to find out later that other people aren't smiling and nodding, it was like, oh my God,
Right.
I could maybe talk about this. I don't even know what I think.
Right.
So that's it, right?
Yeah, that's a actually, as you've been talking about, I realized I did think about God, or I did think about the universe, and I had it's the type of thoughts you have when you're laying in bed at night, awake before you fall asleep, and you're pondering. I remember I enjoyed in high school, or maybe even middle school, I would lay there and think about the universe, and I would try to think about nothing. What if we just removed everything? And I would completely frazzle myself, right? Like it was, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that experience of getting to the limits of my ability to comprehend, and having it just be mind blowing. And so, and I definitely had thoughts about, if a friend's parent died or something. I had some wooey mysticism type. It wasn't in a Eastern religion style or anything like that. It was always about a monotheistic God, but it was I didn't think about it in the context of my church. I didn't think about it of, hey, let's take these things home from Sunday and think about those things. It was more of, I had my own beliefs, and then I was going to church on Sunday as well. And then there was also political debates on TV. I was very, I loved watching the news, and so I was very up on current events. And that was, I probably had a lot of beliefs that went against Catholic doctrine, but it never dawned on me.
It never
Right?
dawned on you. So it's like you compartmentalized.
And I was
very interesting. Let me just hold on a second here.
Wait, but I don't think that's too unusual in the Northeast, where I grew up in a very old style. Like, there weren't a lot of evangelical churches. It was a lot of Protestant and Catholic churches that were more ritualistic, more ceremonial. There was a lot less Bible study. You had a couple of Assemblies of Gods and other little churches where you'd actually sit around and talk about it. But generally, it was a form of ritual that was part of what you just went through each week. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's why it was allowed to kind of be this compartmentalized, separate thing. I don't know. I don't think it's that
I know what
unusual.
you're saying.
I don't think it's that unusual for that style. It's almost like if you think about The Godfather, right? Where they're at Michael's baptism, right? And then you have the big shooting going down, and it's very compartmentalized that way. Their faith, their Catholic family was very important to them, and church is very important to them. It has no bearing on the fact that they're
on what they do, right? So this is really interesting, right? Because my mom, she's from France. She is, and everybody in her, family line has been in France. So she was like the first one who ever sort of bothered to mingle outside of France, and she moved to America. And I won't get into that, right? But what's interesting is that this sort of this thing that you're describing, where the religious ceremonies and things like that are sort of compartmentalized, but nonetheless preserved, is something that I would affirm, having been in France every summer and having seen it. So it's almost like France is like more secular than America, because, but nonetheless, there's this big Catholic thing going on, and everybody does the Catholic thing, but it's almost like they sort of recognize that what they're really doing is literally a quote unquote Catholic thing. And then they leave, and then they live their lives however they wish, regardless, right? Whereas in America, even with all the freedom of religion that we have, or maybe because of it, people take their religious thoughts more seriously. They don't compartmentalize in the way that, at least in France and probably in the UK, especially maybe because they've got, the UK is really weird, but so I don't know. I'm just saying that I recognize what you're saying, and it is magnified in France as an example. That this idea of compartmentalizing, even if it's accidental, definitely occurs. And so I think that it. So the question is, well, what does it give? What are the advantages of doing that? And I think maybe there are simple, practical advantages. You don't have to examine what you claim you believe. You can just continue to claim you believe it and put it off on the side when you're not literally in church, and then live a secular life. And then Sunday comes around again, and you pull out your sort of box of beliefs with respect to these bizarre or unusual beliefs. You just pull them out for those 2 or 3 hours where you're going to do Sunday, and then you can just put them back on a shelf and forget them.
Yeah, I don't think it's true. I don't think it's. I think it's also something I noticed about politics in New England is where I was. So
Okay,
New England definitely has that style of politics where your own personal beliefs can be very different. So you have a lot of independence. There's a lot less. It may be different now with the Tea Party movement, but certainly in the time when I was growing up, party affiliation wasn't rock solid. I think there's a lot more independence, and I think that's true of New Hampshire, Vermont, those areas. So I think that's partially has something to do with it as well. So I was going to ask you. You have a background, and we don't have to talk about this at all, but you have a background, I think, in psychology or something. I hear it mentioned every once in a while. Is that true?
So I have a PhD in experimental psychology.
Okay.
Yes, true.
And are you has that ever bordered on your you said that you never brought out your lack of faith, or you never brought up the subject. Did it never come up in your studies at all or anything like that? Or did it ever hit a spot where it bordered on your studies, or you got dog madness there?
I do have dog madness, but what are you asking? Has my lack of faith ever interfered with my? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Not interfered. I guess if I was someone, so for instance, I went to art school, right? So art school, maybe if I was a fine artist, my faith might be my lack of faith. Had I been an atheist, may have infused itself in my art in some way or something like that. But certainly, if I was going to school studying how people think and how social interactions occur and what things involved in psychology, I would think that there would be at some point some crossover or anything like that, but it doesn't sound like that was ever the case for you, where you had studies that were poking on you and making you think about those things.
Yeah, I think I would probably say no, at least not personally, but I think that intersection with faith and other aspects of real life do interact with something that is interesting and remains interesting.
I've definitely been envious of that. As you've entered the discussions with Ozzy and others, the philosophy aspect of it seems to have some crossover with your studies or exposure to certain academic papers or individuals whom it seems like you've had some exposure to.
Well, yes. So, I mean, it's going to be hard to talk about, right? But I think that I have some advantage over sort of the people who are specifically and perhaps exclusively philosophically trained, because so to say it in a vaguish way, right? So um, I have a specialty in autism and autism intervention, and that, in my opinion, kind of gives me a window that people who are only studying philosophy and only teaching philosophy, they don't have access to this window. And I've got an obsession with autism, and and uh, and so I can't help but frame. And this is another thing, right? I've got to really be careful to not be boring, because, left to my own devices, I would constantly bring it up.
I don't think you can be. And I mean this with all sincerity. I don't think you can be boring, as
Well,
much as
okay.
you think, as much as you think you can. But go ahead.
Well, I think I'm really careful not to do sort of the typical things, like, when you first get a baby, all you can talk about is your baby. So it's easy to know that and to make sure you don't do that. So I've just kind of applied that to this other thing. But in truth, I am obsessed, and perhaps will be until I die, with with autism, and therefore, whatever happens to be the topic of discussion, be it grocery stores, or what is your favorite flower, or, what is the nature of the mind, I can't help but always have that in the back of my head. And so I think that I do have a certain empirical advantage that I'm reluctant to share, right? Because then it sort of goes off on a tangent. But yes, I think maybe that's why I'm interested in the philosophical angle, although it's only been relatively recently, I'd say within the past couple of weeks, that I have accepted that my interest in the great debate is philosophical. Because, and that just comes because I've had a couple of people go, like, send me PMs that were like, I didn't know you cared so much about philosophy. And I'm thinking, who says I care about philosophy? But I must, right? If I've got all these people saying I do.
Was that how would you have characterized it before that point?
How would I characterize what?
Would you have said that your interest was theological, or was it how would you? I'm surprised at that.
Yeah. How would I have characterized my interest? I think I would have characterized it as practicing expressing myself, because I've never done it before.
Would you have seen the characterization of it as being an interest in philosophy? Would that have been a dirty word before, or?
No, it's not a dirty word. But I do have a bizarre relationship with philosophy, because of my personal experience with, deciding to take a class in philosophy, that kind of crap, right? So, right, but put all that aside, I guess my concerns, I didn't realize, were in the realm of philosophy. Right?
There's a lot of people who do not like their college experience in philosophy.
I think there's a serious problem. Really, really, really. I really, really do. I think there's a serious problem with the American education system and its presentation of philosophy as a choice for students. Yeah. I really think there's something bad going on there.
You and Ozzy had mentioned, maybe it was a couple of days ago, about gym class and replacing that. Because it was what was it? The class to figure out who all the bullies were? Is that what
that's how I see gym class, right? And I mean, when I went through gym class, I was lucky, right? I was athletic, right? I was good at it, right? But even though I was in the company of the ones that were good at it, it was awful. I could see how terrible it was for people who weren't good at it.
Right.
And it's like Lord of the Flies, that and Recess, right?
So So
I think that's horrible. I think that's just, we should be doing something about that.
There are lessons to be learned in that experience as well. The interesting thing is I was on a walk with my wife today, and there was a quiet moment where I was thinking to myself, and I realized that philosophy is the philosophy I've been exposed to through the Great Debate has been about how to think about beliefs and how you form knowledge and what constitutes knowledge. And it's amazing I was realizing in a brief moment, it's funny how I could probably talk about for 20 minutes what I had in just a section of my mind for a moment, was a thought that kids are undergoing or going through education without any foundational class in how to think about thinking, which is remarkable when you think about it. How do you form propositions, and what is a proposition, and what are your beliefs? And these are all things that we take for granted, and what's good evidence, what's justification. You get a little bit of that in your science classes, but not as a whole in terms of just thinking about what it is you're thinking about, right? So it's really interesting to me that's such a gap in our education, that we don't teach kids that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, and it's much, much worse since No Child Left Behind. I mean, now teachers are just, the expectations put on teachers are so unrealistic. I don't understand why there are even any teachers anymore in these lower grades. But even granting all that and just forgetting about it, throw that out, right? Because at least you hold on to, it's going to be okay. Once I get to college, things will be better, right? But they're not.
Right.
It's the same thing, right? And you know, so
I think it was evidenced in the fact that when I got to college, and this is I think it's a remarkable thing, or a really interesting thing, is when I go to a Bible study and then go back to my dorm room and decide to chuck my entire worldview and adopt this whole other one, right? Like, that just shows how little I had actually had cemented anything in my belief set, that I could go, well, I might have to adjust this or that. I just chucked the whole thing and took on something else old hat, right?
Well, but that's kind of promising. I mean, that means that at least one person had an experience in college that changed their entire worldview overnight.
Right. I don't think that's a good thing, though. That shows how little I thought about, or at least how little I had thought about how just the justification for my beliefs, that I was willing to abandon them, and take on worldviews. Worldviews are an interesting topic to me recently, because I had somebody give me a list of things that my worldview would have to do to be a valid worldview. And it was all of these grand, giant things, right, that are big explanations. And I'm like, well, but if you build your worldview up from the bottom up, and you've just got a working knowledge of the things that you have experience with, how is that not valid, right? That's exactly what a worldview is for. It's just your beliefs that inform your interactions, right? And how you can reliably react or interact with the world. And here, this guy is giving me this laundry list of things that he's saying, if I can't answer for them, my worldview is invalid. And I'm like, that's just a completely perverse way to think about a belief framework, right?
Well, that is really interesting. I would love for you to send me that list.
Oh, well,
really.
It's a gem, because I'm just like, wow, really? My worldview is not valid then? And how do you know these things, right? Like, there are things that are just, oh my gosh, you're like this, primate for maybe 70 years on this chunk of rock going 60,000 miles an hour around a sun, and you're expected to know that these things, right? Like, have some humility.
Well, but so without having read what you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. What about this? So let's assume that this person's list that he sent to you, has really very interesting and intriguing questions on it and that kind of thing, right? So what if that were given to someone in the early stages of their development, like a neurotypical kid, right? Do you think that would be a good thing? Because I could see how, I haven't seen what you're talking about.
If what was given to, you're saying
this list. So you're saying that somebody sent you a list that says, in order to have a valid and sound worldview, you must account for this big long list of things.
Right.
Was that the nature of the thing you got?
Yeah, and it essentially was saying that if your worldview can't account for all of reality and the ultimate causes, then it's not valid. Which is
So,
I've been referring to that as a top-down approach to belief formation versus a bottom-up, right? So instead, what you're being given the entire. It's like somebody comes up to you from around the bend, hands you a map, and goes, "Here's where everything is. That map you've been drawing is garbage. Toss it out." And you just take this thing on. This guy say so, right? Instead of being more judicious and working your way through the map and just bothering to map the places you've been. And if you've been there a few times, maybe you draw it a little darker, right? And then when you return to those places, you know where everything is. But you don't have to answer for what's over that mountain because you never go over there, right? So what's the point of it, right? And so that's where I see this kind of bottom up versus this top down of, hey, here's the map and these are all the answers. And you might like, what if I never go over that mountain, right? Can I really buy into that this guy did and that this is where everything is, right? So and he can't give you anything, and on top of that, he can't give me any account for how he visited all these places and managed to map it all, right?
Right. So, but still, and you know, I'm trying my best to sort of imagine what you're talking about, and obviously, I can't know exactly.
These are things like if it can't account for morality would be one of the easier ones. It was
so morality.
It would be like an ultimate cause if it can't. I wonder if I have it around.
So it'd be like, so he was sort of. So here's sort of what I'm thinking. So it sounds like he sent you this thing and he was supplying answers for all of these bullet points, right? And saying that because of these bullet points, whatever it is that you've got, it's not as good as whatever it is that I've got. But if I would imagine, just disregard all of that and look at the kernel of what it is, the essence of all his bullet points. What if, you know, those bullet points were given to someone really young? I think that might not necessarily be a bad thing, right? Like, so for example, you give to somebody who's somewhere between 6 and 9 bullet points that ask the questions that he thinks he's got answers to. Right. That might start a developmental process whereby each kid has that in the back of their head as they go through life, which I think would be a good thing. You wouldn't have to do this retroactive thing that a lot of us are doing.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Well, I don't know if I gave that list to a kid, I'm not sure what, like, I don't know how I'd explain that to them or how I would, like, where would they know to me, it's the wrong way to think about what beliefs are for, right? Like it leverages.
What are they for, Bert?
Well, my beliefs. So let's say I'm a toddler on a mat in a living room, laying on my back, and I've got this toy dangling above me, and I'm just hitting the crap out of that thing. I develop an inference, right, in terms of. I develop a belief in terms of when I have the visual experience of my hand swinging out in front of me and I feel this sensation that I've hit something. That's when I'm making this thing move, and I build this inference regarding causation and regarding what it is to have the visual experience of my hand contact something and what I should expect from that. And from those early moments throughout, you're building your framework of experiences and your inferences regarding the world and how you can, a child walks up to water for the first time, or not walks up, I guess, if he's been deprived of water for a long time, if he's walking up. But you have a child who comes across something they've never been presented with, and they're going to operate on the inferences they have and find that they fail, but they'll quickly learn, oh, that's actually a liquid. or here I thought that this was this representation was before me. I inferred that it was this, but that's not actually the case. That's the, for instance, when you hide a ball from a child or something, and he thinks that it's gone out of existence.
Yeah. So
not,
move on to the connection before I lose. So I get that idea. Now connect that to the other thing.
So my point is you're building this belief setup based on just on your experiences. And so for me, beliefs are the purpose of beliefs are to map the world so that the next time you walk up to water, you know that you're not going to be able to walk on it, right?
Okay.
So you've developed some info, and so it's this working model for the sake of just having the interactions that you have on a daily basis. And if you have a new interaction, let's say God shows up tonight in my room, I'm going to develop an inference or that will be my first experience with that experience. And I will have some type of belief regarding that, but that hasn't happened yet. So why do I have to wander way beyond my experience to pose answers to things which I haven't had those belief forming experiences? What would be even the purpose of it? What would to establish my predictable response for something I never interact with? Like it, do you know what I'm saying? So I see beliefs as being operative, and things they are things I leverage, right? It's something, and my confidence is something that I leverage, and that's based on my justification and how often I interact with those things, and how I think I can know them. But then when somebody comes in with this worldview idea and says, "Here's all the answers in this book. This is what you need to believe." That to me is a bizarre way to approach. I don't even see that as having to do anything with what beliefs are actually about.
I think you're right. Of course.
I actually found, I think, the list of
great. Okay.
These things. So
okay, good. So let's look at that list, because so sort of how could I save this is sort of, wait a second, what if we forget that person's conclusions, but we look at sort of the essence of his bullet point in terms of questions. And then if we present those questions to people before they've been through a huge process of development, might that be a better thing than not doing so? So let's see the list.
So the list, actually, I think I actually made it more concise. Okay. I don't have the concise list, but I'll read it to you kind of what it says. It says, and I think he's quoting another source, actually. So he says, a coherent worldview must answer the questions of origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. A watertight
coherent worldview must answer the questions of morality.
Morality.
What else?
Meaning.
Meaning. What does that even mean? Okay, morality, meaning.
Origin.
Origin.
And destiny.
Sorry.
Yeah. Kind of there's a little bit of a built-in assumption there. So
yeah. Okay. So
it says basically if there aren't watertight answers to these questions, then the worldview is utterly useless.
Wow. How? Wow. I mean.
So and there was another.
I'm speechless, right? By that sort of assertion that your worldview is utterly useless if you haven't come up with definitive answers. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. It says a viable worldview must offer adequate answers to these questions: ultimate reality, what kind of God, if any, actually exists? External reality, is there anything beyond the cosmos? Knowledge, what can be known, and how can anyone know it? Origin, where did I come from? Identify who I am. Location, where am I? Morals, how should I live? Values, what should I consider of great worth? Predicament, what is humanity's fundamental problem? Resolution, how can humanity's problem be solved? That kind of assumes there's a problem. Past, present, what is the meaning and direction of history? Destiny, will I survive the death of my body? And if so, under what state? Under these criteria, I believe biblical Christianity makes for a compelling worldview.
Okay, I mean, under these criteria, I mean, I am forced to agree. Under these criteria and the condition that it is better to have an answer than to not have an answer, Christianity does supply answers to those questions.
That's true. Yep.
But, you know, so, okay, fine, right? But if I were going to try to take this list and, you know, let's say, you know, I was required to do something with the list, what I would want to do with it was, I think those are good questions. And I think that that those questions can be introduced at an earlier age and can be purposefully introduced, as opposed to, you know, waiting until somebody gets in college and then they have to sort of, oh, I didn't even realize there was such a question. That kind of stuff that happens, that is, I think, it perhaps typically American thing, especially since, you know, No Child Left Behind, where all of our emphasis has completely been diverted from teaching people how to think about things, teaching people how to analyze things, teaching people how to express their opinions about things, over to make sure you know the correct answer.
Right.
That something is lost. So I think that list might be valuable in those particular terms. But I don't know that it's a good argument that Christianity is necessarily better than some other religion or a non-religious state.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I think you're onto something in terms of that, not leaving those things to others to essentially. I think what happens is your children leave high school and go off to college, and someone is going to bring up those issues with them, and they're not going to have answers for them because you haven't brought that up with them. And I definitely, actually, this was something I wanted to talk to you about, was in terms of child rearing and in terms of how you educate your own children. For myself, it was very important that I was very open about those things with my children, and we discussed things at the dinner table, or we would, when we were at a museum or we were on a car ride home or whatever, we would have a conversation about things. And I never wanted to give my kids inevitably they knew my perspectives, or they could anticipate my perspectives based on what they knew my views were. But I would never let them say, I don't know what to think about this. What do you think? Without the question.
You never let them say that?
Only because I want to hear their answer first. I don't want to be giving them, I don't want to be polluting their thinking process. I want them to work at how would you approach it? How would you resolve the answer? How would you?
That's so funny. I was exactly the same. Right?
You mean when you were raising your own children, you mean?
Yeah, so with my own, I only have one, right? And so, and there were some complications due to, obviously, autism, right? But after we got over that hump, I was also very similar to you, right? So if for example, my own kid and her cousins, we'd all be in the car. Mm-hmm. If one of them said, Helena, what do you think? I would never answer when they were really young, right? I would want them to think through it. And that's kind of, it sounds like what you were saying. Like, I mean, we could just take something simple like Santa Claus, right? Back when everybody was super young, right? And they would say, Mom, is there such a thing? And you're right. So you've got a couple of options. You can say, yes, of course. You can say no, or you can say, well, what do you think? Mm-hmm. I always would take the, well, what do you think? And then sort of go off of what they said.
Yeah, my Santa Claus story is pretty funny because my daughter was the first to find out, and I came clean with her that there was no Santa Claus, and she went right down and told her youngest brother. So,
wow.
My wife reminds me of that every once in a while.
Santa Claus is really interesting in my personal background, right? Like, I really, people often say, so there's an inclination to compare Santa Claus to God,
Mhm.
And then there's also scoffing about doing so.
Right.
Well, I had a bizarre childhood because the American side of my family had literally conspired to create physical evidence of Santa Claus. Right? So for example, Santa Claus literally came to the house. I met Santa Claus every Christmas.
Hmm.
Right? So it wasn't left to the imagination. I had empirical evidence, right? Because my grandpa on the American side dressed up as Santa Claus and would come in either through the door, or they would put us kids in in a separate room, and then they would like mess up the chimney area, and then when they would be like, oh, Santa Claus is coming, and we'd all come rushing in, and there'd be my grandpa standing among soot, literal soot, right? So I had empirical evidence for Santa Claus as far as I knew, right? And
Yeah.
so to me, I think that the connection between Santa Claus and God should not be dismissed so easily.
So
And
so did the 8-year-old Helena, did she go after Santa Claus quite as viciously, or was it that the evidence had satisfied your questioning?
this is so interesting. I've never thought about this. So let's see. So second grade. So when did so first of all, how I learned that Santa Claus was fake.
They should have staged more evidence from the gospel, apparently.
But how I learned, God, how I learned that Santa Claus was fake depends on who you ask. So, in my recollection, I was a lot younger than in my mother and father's recollection. So I think that I learned it on my own through diligent scientific study, having seen a string, right? So I have this memory that I was sitting on the lap of Santa Claus in the home of my grandparents, American side, and I noticed the string to the beard, and that was like the big thing. However, my mother and my father both agree that 1 year prior, the same thing happened, and I ignored it. Right? So I have to go with their recollection, right? So they think that the year before kindergarten, I sat on my grandpa, aka Santa's lap, and saw a string and had a fit and accused everybody of betrayal and screamed and yelled and carried on, and then forgot about it. And then the next year, sort of the same thing happened. They're obviously probably right. I don't remember it happening twice. I think it was, the end of kindergarten, and that's kind of late, right? Like I remember sort of saying things to other kindergartners like, you don't think Santa Claus is real? You just wait. Stay up. Don't fall asleep, and you'll see him because he comes, because he has come, that kind of thing, right? Like he is risen, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a real, sorry, my dogs are like so insistent I give them attention that they're knocking the headphones out of my ears. I think that there's a connection there that Christian parents, if you want to keep your kids Christian, be careful what you do with Santa Claus, right? So if you present Santa Claus in some kind of real way, you're going to have a problem when it comes to God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I wonder whether that thing that went on with me with Santa Claus and the mistakes, in my opinion, that the adults made in terms of rendering Santa Claus empirical for me, I can't say, but I think probably that had a big thing. It was probably in there somewhere with why I very quickly and pretty early, compared to most others, just sort of went, this whole God thing just doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure, but I can't relive it any other way. So
I don't think that's uncommon. So I think you're right, because I think it breaks down trust a little bit. It gives it a precedence that there are things you're that you are believing that may not in fact be the case, with everybody telling you that it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole adult conspiracy over Santa Claus is something that should be examined, right?
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
did it.
what the hell are you doing to your kids?
I think it's.
And
I
in my
think
case,
it's.
it was magnified because they went through extremes, right? Like my dad would literally go up on the roof and make noises on the roof, time it right so that when my grandpa came in, obviously it was obviously the ranger. What else could it possibly be, right? I mean, and I find that to be really cruel. I think that was cruel and a big mistake.
Your family went to great lengths. I'll give them that. So,
well, at least the American side, right? The French side was like, what is this? C'est fou.
The hell's on the roof? Oh,
yeah, right.
My French friends loved when I do that. So
when you do
yeah.
But are you from Canada?
No. I'm
okay.
I'm from the U.S., but I am quarter French. So.
Wow! Isn't that interesting? It's really interesting. The Canadians. I don't know much about Canadians.
I was in New Hampshire, so we had when I went down to the beach, there was always people down from Quebec that would come through the state and be at the beach in their little bikinis, and all the Americans are wearing their long shorts. I probably saw Ozzy down there at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, you may have. Yeah, so I spent every summer in France, right? So that's another thing, right? Mm-hmm. What did that do to me, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of how could I believe in absolutes or things like that when I'm in this Puritan culture and then suddenly thrown into this other culture, and we had apartments in Cannes, Saint-Tropez. Mm-hmm. And so there were a lot of beaches, and it's just a different culture. So, very, very young, I was exposed to two cultures that are different. Now, obviously, they're not nearly as different as they could have been, but at least in terms of sexuality and that kind of thing, I think I got the basic idea that there could be different cultures that had different foundational beliefs. Sure. Even though there's not that big of a difference between France and America, there is this sexual difference that at least I picked up on.
Right.
So there's something to be said for experience shaping beliefs, and I can't know contributed to what.
Right. Right. Do you want me to open up the Hangout to the friends list and see if people want to come in?
Well, sure, of course.
For a moment, get a couple of our friends in here. Let me see if I can think. Let me see if I can think of one more thing while I'm doing that. So
things you were interested in. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I know. What do you want out of your engagements? I guess in the Great Debate or on Google Plus. What are you looking to do?
Yeah. So. I don't know. I think perhaps when I first got started, I thought, oh, this will give me a chance to actually say something about stuff I've always thought, right? But now that I've had some opportunities, I'm finding that I am very, very intrigued hearing other people's perspectives and trying to imagine how those perspectives came about. So I think now I am sort of investigating other people, perhaps. I don't know. I want to let it do its own thing and see what happens.
Right.
But what about you? Because you had a very different life.
In terms of what I would like here.
Yeah.
For the debate, lately, and I just posted to my friends list. So the link, if you want to do the same, Helena.
I don't know how. I
just grabbed the list up there, but
so let me see. What I'm going to do is copy and paste this URL and then just sort of post it on Google Plus to circles. Is that
Sure.
what you're suggesting? Okay, I'll do that. All right, so go ahead. What is it that you are hoping to get out of, or do you see a direction you'd like to take it? Or
well, what I'd like to see is I feel like there's a lot of addressing the low-hanging fruit. The flat Earth stuff, for instance, is one. which is good entertainment, and it's kind of it's a little easy. I would prefer. I don't mind. I love interacting with intelligent Christians who we can exchange understandings and come to understand each other's positions and get some richness out of that. But I'm also looking to engage more atheists, have more discussions about some of the underlying philosophy, right? So like whether it's talking about morality or theories of truth or knowledge, I feel like or determinism, right? We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, I'm hoping. So this is interesting about determinism, real quick. This is not going to seem very. So I was privy to a conversation between Ozzy and someone else about this matter of determinism, and Ozzy brought up some stuff I'd never even occurred to me. And so I want to, you don't get I want to put the determinism discussion on my hangout. But yeah, so, okay, so you want to talk about determinism, but
or the broader issues, right? I feel like even with there used to be a series called Sophia Ex Nihilo.
Oh my God, I loved that. I loved that.
Yeah, Sophia Ex Nihilo. That was it. And those guys, it was varied backgrounds. So Maximus participated. There was a girl, I can't remember.
There was
her name.
Maximus. There was a young kid, like a genius 16-year-old kid. And then it was John McDropout.
Yeah, and Gibran Ludwig.
That's it, Gibran. That's the kid. Right. Whatever happened to him? He's gone.
Gibran's fantastic. I like him a lot.
I
hope he comes. I think Ozzy said that he's been occupied with his studies, so I hope he comes back. But but those discussions were among all believers and non-believers, but having a common philosophical discussion about the merits of Van Til's text, right, or about the cosmological argument, or the one that I liked was the ontological argument, which Anselm's ontological argument, I just tossed that out the window, but that was a fantastic breakdown of it, right?
I don't know, maybe, Anyway, let's not get sidetracked. So I love that series. I am sad that it's gone. Yes. But it sounds like, are you saying that you just want more philosophy?
More discussion about the broader range of topics, and not just the appealing to the easiest or the lowest common denominator. And there's a place for that. There's an entertainment. Like, I love Talking Shit Tuesday, right? Like, I love Skylar's videos, right? Like, I enjoy watching them, and I want to have not unlike the conversations we've had in the last couple of days, things that where we really dig into an issue and try to get at it without it breaking down into ranting, right?
Okay, so I've got a thing about that, okay? Because I don't think that so first of all, there's no way we can get rid of that, even if we don't like it, right? But I don't want to get rid of it. Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think it could be up to the individual to frame each discussion that they're in, right? And I think that if everybody, both sides, all sides, take it upon ourselves to try to really hear the essence of what someone is trying to get at, even if while they express it, they're not doing it in a civil manner, or there are ad hominems going back and forth, right? I think that even all of that, if you really try hard to hear what they're trying to say, you can turn the conversation back, at least a little bit.
Yeah, you've made a really great point, and I'll throw it to the guests who have joined us, and hello all. But you made a really great point in regards to rational theist Matt. So Matt Bell was in a hangout with you yesterday, and somebody jumped to your defense and said he shouldn't be dogging you like that. Essentially,
Gus was like, enough.
And you said, look, if you don't dig back, he'll just settle back down, and then you can get at that guy has. I've said it time and again. I enjoy his rigor because he is not charitable at all, and there's something to be gained out of that for me.
Well, this is the perfect example. Matt Bell had something very nuanced to say about the mistake I was making. right?
Mhm.
And I was very interested in it because I brought it back up again, right? So
But
I
he
have
has to
made
call
some
you
claims.
stupid first.
Yeah. Oh, okay. But that's just because
But
I know him a little bit, right? So it doesn't
it's
bother
okay that
me.
he hits me. It's okay. Oh, yes, I love it.
No, it's not the
Just
same.
tell me what I'm doing wrong.
It's not the same.
I mean, I'm a Christian and I have a persecution complex, so I mean, I don't know what's in it for you, Helena.
Well, you know, who the hell knows? But, you know, at least I've gotten to know a couple of people, right? And I think, and, you know, I've got all kinds of theories about this. My current theory is I grew up with my own brother, who is an explosive personality type, and, you know, I spent my summers in France with that half of the family, which were all explosive, you know, almost Italian, maybe more so than Italians. And I've got a lot of, from the other side, a lot of calm sort of things, right? So maybe it's that, I don't know. But the thing is, look, that accusation that Matt Bell threw at me has been thrown at me from all sides, right? I mean, so many people say and have said in the past, you know, well, you obviously don't know anything about philosophy in one form or another. So, I mean, if I let that get under my skin, I'd be a professional victim already, right? So that really didn't bother me. I mean, I've had every single philosopher, except perhaps maybe Ozzy, maybe I don't want to, throw him under the bus, but it's possible Ozzy never has done this, but everybody else for sure has told me at one point or another, you don't know shit, shut up, right? But in much more charitable form. So if I let that bother me, where would I be? That doesn't bother me at all. And besides that, Matt Slick had something. He had something important. I wanted to see what it was. And it took a long time, but I finally brought it back to him, and he expressed it. And by God, if it wasn't really nuanced, very sophisticated, and absolutely made me understand where he was coming from. But if I had just sort of reacted to his reaction, I never would have got that.
I guess it's just a different way of approach, because for me, I really give back what people give me. If someone's going to be express kindness and patience with me, I'm going to do it with them. I've actually tried this with Matt Bell, and I've said, you know what, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm having one of those days when my anxiety is really getting the best of me. I'm going to literally agree with everything Matt Bell says. Everything. And so he was shot off at the mouth. Yeah, kalam, whatever. Premise one, whatever. And so I said, okay, that sounds cool, Matt. That's right, and you're stupid. And I'm like,
hold on. I'm not suggesting that the tactic is to agree with everything they say.
well, no,
that would obviously be stupid,
I'm saying,
because they would smell that you were being dishonest.
well,
right?
yeah, I said I'm going to be nice. This is just something I wanted to see for myself. You know, it had really nothing to do with an argument. So, you know what, Mel, I just want to listen to you. I want to understand what you're saying. I'm going to sit here and agree with whatever you have to say, just so I can learn from you. And I'm not going to respond to insults.
Yeah, but
I blatantly told him that.
To do that. Oh, you blatantly told him that?
I told him that was that.
Well,
Okay. In what way do you think that was effective?
Well,
It could have been effective.
if someone says, you know what, Drag, no matter how much you insult me, I'm just going to sit here and listen to you, that doesn't elicit a response that says, okay, well, for me, I should just sit there and berate them constantly. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to communicate to them.
Some people
I really doubt your conclusion.
I mean, maybe I should have approached it a different way, but, I didn't respond to any of his insults, and I just, sat and said, okay, that sounds cool, Matt. Okay, cool. All right, Matt. Okay, Matt. His goal, and he said this before, he sees himself as a champion for Christian theology. And he is so offended by memes and things that people say on Google Plus and on Facebook that he feels that he needs to counteract that. Now, he said this before.
Yeah, I wonder if that's really true. He doesn't strike me as someone. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I think he's full of shit too. But that's just that whatever his reason is, he feels that's the most effective way to get across to people. That's what he needs to do.
Fighting fire with fire.
But on the opposite side, I'm going to pick on Ozzy for a minute. I love listening to Ozzy. I don't care too much for philosophy, but Ozzy has this thing about when he starts explaining something, he starts to tell a story. He spins a fucking yarn, and I stop listening to what he's saying, and I want to go grab some lotion and a blanket. It's just like, you know,
Wait,
Hold on,
wait.
What the fuck did I just hear? What was that?
I wanted Ozzy. No, I wanted
Ozzy is
Ozzy
a
to turn
great
red.
teacher.
Okay,
Ozzy
I'm
is a great
turn
teacher.
red.
In my opinion,
What?
Ozzy has every single quality that is required for a fabulous teacher.
only
And
Ozzy
that
talks
is
wood.
something-
I'm just saying.
Well, the only thing is this. I wish.
Can we not talk about the word?
Ozzy, I'm all ready for you, buddy. Let's go.
Oh my god.
I just wish on the opposite side, I just wish Ozzy would kind of break things up so that I can concentrate more on the content. So it really is how it's delivered, and I'm not the only one that kind of feels this way. It's just sometimes it's a lot of stuff to digest at once.
No, I've said this before. Ozzy just is one of these guys you can listen to because you know he's a smart guy. But God fucking hell, sometimes Ozzy, shut up. You take too long.
Well,
He's too nice in that regards. It's not a bad trait. It's just he wants to be as articulate and as nice as possible. But in some cases, Ozzy, you should just tell people to go fuck themselves. It would be a lot quicker. Seriously.
I disagree.
In a nice way.
We could talk about. Well, the issue is that
Let's all gossip about Ozzy, even though he's sitting right there.
I know. I just want him to turn red. I like.
I love Ozzy. Okay, most people in the community love Ozzy because we know he's a guy with a brain.
Well, if you're not Mark Anthony, you like him. But
he's got an amazing ability to explain things. I don't think anybody could disagree with that. Even this Mark Anthony, you could not disagree.
But see, here's the thing. I had a conversation with a coworker of mine. He is a Christian and I'm an atheist. We do share a common bond because we're both veterans. But I don't feel the need to do some of the same things that I do on Google+. I think a part of this is that, this is a medium. We can't reach across the table to someone when they're disrespectful. So some of us are more, and I'll throw myself in there, some of us are more inclined to be a little more rude and a little less tactful.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we do have to take into account how we are communicating with one another, because I can't kind of interpret body language here that well because there's so much going on. I'm looking at 3-4 different people right now, and so it's harder for me to really hone in on what Ozzy is saying sometimes because he has his avatar off. I can't look at his body language. I can't kind of intuit what's really going on because that's a big part of how I stop laughing for it.
If his avatar was not on, it might go a lot quicker. I'm just saying.
But I think that has a lot to do with it.
Quickly say, Drag, I love it when your avatar is off, and especially when your shirt is off. So
there you go.
Anyway,
she likes a bit of coffee in her milk. Sorry. That was inappropriate, but okay.
Well, Ozzy is pretty eloquent and all a lot of times, but sometimes he does get fed up, and I remember that classic, "I'm nobody's bitch."
Yeah.
When I heard Ozzy say that, I like to die.
No, but that's the thing. I've said that to Ozzy when we did the interview on Beyond the Bullshit. It's just like the guy knows his shit, right? In that regards, and no, I don't think anybody could deny he knows his shit. But at the same time, he tries to be so accommodating, where it's just like, can you just tell him to fuck off?
I'm sorry. I totally disagree. I don't think he's trying to be accommodating. When he objects, and he objects strenuously. So I just wholeheartedly disagree with that.
Oh, trust me, I think he knows it already, and he admitted to it on Beyond the Bullshit. He's like, yeah, well, I could tell him to fuck off, but that's not who I am, which that's a normal thing, right? If he wants to go about a certain argument a certain way, then that's cool. But most of us get frustrated because most of us wouldn't give these idiots the time of day, and he does, which is frustrating. It's just like,
I gotta tell you, as
it doesn't mean that he has to say fuck off.
I'll tell you, as somebody that's on the other side, I have appreciated Ozzy for not being a dick to me when I'm like, oh, I don't understand, or can you explain this? Because a lot of times here, I've noticed, whether they're Christian or, the Christians particularly, will use jargon, and sometimes it isn't even by proper definition, because I'll start looking it up by, I have a Stanford dictionary.
It's atheist too. It's atheist. I'll throw myself in there.
And I go, like they'll start talking above other people, and then they know they're talking above other people, and they keep doing it. They don't rephrase. They don't explain. They just want to confuse you, and it's like a weird, dishonest tactic. And Ozzy, you don't do that.
I've seen something like that.
Let's see if Ozzy, do you want to add anything in
No,
here?
we don't care about Ozzy. He can
Yeah,
just shut up.
Ozzy, shut up.
I want to know why.
Let me just say this right now. Fuck you, Ozzy.
Fuck you, dude. Classic.
I think that after all this talk about Ozzy, maybe we should give him a chance to say something.
Yeah,
I want to see Ozzy chop wood.
Oh, God. You have no idea.
Go
Hold
on.
on, let me grab a couple of tissues. Hold on. I'm going to grab a couple of tissues.
I want to know why Bert has like KY jelly within arm's reach of his computer.
It's all that fucking working for fucking Pixar, dude. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Come on. Just saying. Go on, Ozzy. Anyway, chop some wood, motherfucker. Chop some wood.
Bert Rule 34 to all the Pixar cartoons.
Come on, Ozzy.
Ozzy is speaking, but no words.
Your mic is off,
Yeah, you
Ozzy.
muted yourself, Ozzy. Come on, unmute yourself, dude. I know you're a great philosopher, but just
we,
press the
we still can't hear him.
We can't hear you, Ozzy.
We can't hear
No.
what the fuck you're saying.
Ozzy, reload your window. See if just come back in.
Oh, we could have kept talking about him.
I was going to throw something in real quick. I came in when y'all was talking about that list of questions. Talk about loaded questions.
That sound
I mean,
like
these
teacher
are
of the
questions.
Bible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like these are questions that you can't answer unless you have some kind of divine revelation or something. You know?
Well, most of them almost all of them were loaded questions.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
I missed
my response to that was that if that is actually the goal in life, to actually answer these questions, I will confess I don't have answers to those questions given my worldview. But I actually don't think that that's the point of worldview. So I disagree fundamentally with what you're talking about. So
Can I just say for the record, I hate the term worldview. Can I just point that out? I detest it.
Yeah, but you don't like to be called an atheist either.
No,
you don't like that I call myself a Christian. You just don't like terms.
No, look, it's the fact that it's just the biggest cop out ever. It's like worldview. It's
Stop labeling.
What does that mean? What does it mean by worldview? Are you telling me it's objective or subjective? It's some kind of like cop out.
Worldview is just your belief set. It's just.
Oh, I love you, Ozymandias. Now we can hear you. Go on.
Okay. Yeah.
Come on, lover. Come on.
I understand why people get annoyed by the expression worldview, because it gets bandied about by people who I think haven't thought a whole lot about what a worldview actually is. And all they mean is their explicit philosophy. You know, a worldview is much more than that. A worldview is the entirety of your belief set, including all of your implicit beliefs. And if you think of it that way, if you think of a worldview as just your belief set, well, of course, everyone has a belief set. Everyone has a worldview. It's just not necessarily an explicit, articulated and self-conscious philosophical position, but everyone has a worldview, right? And so when people say, you know, according to your worldview, according to my worldview, there's a lot of presumption when people talk about your worldview, when really they're talking about the entirety of your belief set. That's what I think is obnoxious about the expression worldview, is when people talk about your worldview as if they have some idea about the contents of your beliefs and your metaphysical assumptions and that sort of thing. It's highly presumptuous, right? When people talk about the atheistic worldview, I mean that's a fatuous claim. I mean, look, you know, there are atheists who believe in karma, who believe in souls. There are people who believe. There are atheists who believe in ghosts and telepathy and all kinds of supernatural woo by my lights. You know, the suggestion that such a person shares the same worldview as me is ludicrous. And so when people talk about the atheist worldview, I just, you know, that's what's obnoxious. It's not that they're using the word, but they're using it to play fast and loose, to characterize.
Yes, I mean the point is that if most people use the word or the term worldview, which is basically saying my fucking opinion. I mean that's basically what it is. They're saying, oh, worldview to sound smart. You don't sound smart. You just sound like a fucking stuck-up little cunt.
I think a lot of what we experience here is sophistry, and of course, again, I would I just read what hell to put. So I would say that, you know, there's a bit of internet sophistry that goes on, and you know, I guess like 4 something years I've been on YouTube. I've had my fair share of it, and it does kind of get old after a while. It's like, well, we toss these terms around, but what does it really mean to have a world? I can't even write down 10 things that I would consider important to a worldview, because at the end of the day, these things that I value, other people aren't going to value. I give you an example. Today, I was in the bathroom, and it just kind of hit me, is that there's no greater feeling that I've ever felt than preparing for death. Now, and I say this, in all of my life, there's no greater feeling than I've had for other than preparing for my own death, and that is something that I can't describe to someone. But that feeling, that just thinking about gives me chills. I love it, and as morbid and macabre as that is, I can't tell someone else that that's what they should value, and that should be a part of their worldview, no matter how important I think it is. So it's really something that I find it very presumptuous for someone to give someone else a list and say your worldview of the culmination of everything that you do know and believe and will probably ever know or believe is invalid because I have X experience or I think X about mine.
Yeah,
Scott is chomping it to bit.
That came from like a Ravi Zacharias sermon. I think he was quoting, or not a sermon, but like a talk or whatever. So.
Oh, he can eat a dick.
I think I think something I find myself repeating more and more and more when in discussions with people, and they start throwing on the atheist worldview, and I'm like, I'm sorry, atheism is a very, very small claim about one very specific thing. Saying that someone is an atheist really doesn't tell you anything about what could be considered a worldview. All it tells you is that they don't believe in a divine being, which really in itself doesn't say a whole lot, despite what some of them may try to argue.
Well, and the whole using the word world is very analogous, to say the least, because what you're trying to say is, oh well, everybody else thinks that the same thing I think because we live on a planet. No. Just because you live on a planet doesn't give your worldview any more fucking, proponents than saying, well, a fucking unicorn made the universe. It doesn't do shit. So if I said to you, my worldview is that the unicorn made the universe, you're gonna go, well, that's not a worldview. That's just your fucking opinion. This is the point. The linguistics of it is the problem. Using the word, I should say, worldview, as some kind of statement of authority, it's fucking pathetic. It's like atheism plus. It's just retarded, basically.
I think atheism has to be paired. Atheism has to be paired with some sort of philosophy, and then you can say it's a worldview. And I would say a lack of a god would be a worldview in my mindset. But it would be part of it. It would be part of it. It wouldn't be all of it.
No,
it's one proposition within a framework of beliefs.
No, but using the word world is the problem. You're trying to say that the world is backing you up in this claim.
No, that's not what the title means, and that's uncharitable.
No, that's how it's interpreted, though. If you say my world,
if it's interpreted that way, it's interpreted that way by an idiot.
A worldview is your view of the world.
I'm sorry to say this, but most people are fucking idiots who live on the planet.
Well, I mean, I worked in a grocery store, and
I'm sorry.
Let's let Ozzy. You can speak to that point, and then maybe go back to the other topic, Ozzy.
Well, I'll just say one thing about worldview. I mean, when people talk about a worldview, they just mean their view of the world,
which is an opinion. Yeah,
okay, it could be an opinion, but so what? I mean, it's your map of reality. It's your picture of the world, right? So, and everyone has one, right? So
yes, but they try and linguist it though. They try and use that use of the word in English. They try and use that to come out like they're smart. It's not. It's just an opinion.
Well, I agree. The expression worldview is a bit of an affectation when a person could just say your picture of reality, or your position, or your perspective, or your outlook, or your
opinion,
philosophical stance. I mean, there's any number of things they could say. Worldview is sort of caught on. I think it's just sort of it's catchy. It's just a kind of faddish expression. It'll go at some point, but it's not meaningless.
Worldview means those things.
That's right. Worldview means those things. You could have used all those others. There's nothing wrong with it.
I just wanted to say really quick. Jimmy Stevens and I actually argued about this term. I don't like the term either because it sounds all-encompassing. I understand everything about you. So I say, why don't we say perspective, or why don't we say,
Or
you know,
opinion.
and we were playing ping pong about it. Nope. And what Stiles might be getting at, I'm not sure, is that,
I think-
there are Christians that do say you're an atheist, so I know all of your worldview.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think
and that is
anybody.
presumptuous. That's
That would be
presumptuous.
true even if you substituted these other terms.
That's right. That's right.
So it's not about the term.
Right. There's
So,
nothing
so
sexual
people
about
should
it.
just, you know, smooth your feathers about the term.
No, it's not. It's no.
Let's
It's the
figure out what's behind the term for each person, right?
Yeah, it's the misuse of the linguistics of the term.
Well,
You see, I mean,
Blah,
you gotta-
blah, blah.
Well,
Stop.
it's not. It's how one conforms to linguistics. If you don't understand how people can manipulate language in order to get you think a certain way, then you don't understand what propaganda is. I'm sorry, but you just don't.
Okay, well, the point that I would make overall is, regardless of what term they use, very few people here know each other well enough to try and quantify someone's perspective about life in general.
The worldview.
Worldview, perspective, whatever you want to call it, because very few people here even know my real name, but many of them will claim to have psychic powers in order to divine what I value in life the most, which
I
is
bet
ridiculous.
I could feel your name. I bet I could.
Yes, you do know my real name.
Probably.
I don't give a shit, honestly. But,
Yeah, but I think Ragnar's completely correct in this in what he's saying. It's true. It's like worldview doesn't mean anything other than, well, my opinion of the world. But that doesn't imply that the world is the way you're subjecting the narrative, right? So I could be a Christian or an atheist or whatever, and I say, oh, my worldview. That doesn't mean shit. It just
Why
means
do
my
we communicate at all, Sty? We have to try words, and we do label
No, I
things.
know.
And then
Yes,
we just have to decide. Every time you think that you run into somebody that's defining something differently, you have to go, when you say worldview, what do you mean?
Yes, and this is the case. I'm English. I understand my language, and I understand when people misuse terms. I understood when George W. Bush said there's a war on terror. Grammatically, that is incorrect. You cannot have a war on terror. It's fundamentally flawed. This is the point.
I'm having a war on
people
drugs.
If people use English incorrectly, I'm gonna point it out because I'm fucking English.
Can we?
It's just
Can we
fun.
You
let's go
drive
ahead.
on the parkway and park in a driveway.
Let's go ahead.
I'm just pointing that out. I'm just pointing out how people can misuse the language.
Let's go ahead and table this for 1 second. And Ozzy, do you want to return to your kind of how you approach the discourse online and what your approach is?
Yeah, I wanted to say something about the people who are characterizing my approach and how long-winded I am. Well, first of all, I agree with that criticism. I know that I'm very verbose. I lack concision. I wish it was different. And if as Dragnout rightly says, it feels like I'm telling a story, it's because very often I have a conclusion in mind. I don't know how to get there, and I have to build a ramp for myself to get from here up to where I'm trying to get to, and it's too steep. I don't know how to get there, and so I build this zigzag thing, and so this ends up this long story as I go back and forth through all these switchbacks, these verbal switchbacks, to finally get to my point. I do, if you let me go on long enough, I get to my point. And part of it is I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to that. I don't want to be misunderstood, and I want to be persuasive, and I'm never quite satisfied with how I'm expressing it, and so I keep adding and adding and adding, and invariably people have to cut me off because I'll go on.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think the way you.
I mean, it pays off. It pays off in some respects, but I mean, it is taxing on people's patience, and I'm grateful that people are.
No, I don't think
it's,
I don't think it's taxing. I just think in certain conversations we have online, I think that some people get frustrated that you could get to the point where, as you are, which I don't want you to change, like people are saying. We don't want you to change. I like.
No. I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm trying to sort of get to a sort of more general thing. But people are different in discourse. I sort of see myself as someone who's like, I have the equivalent of someone who has a stutter. If you're talking to someone who stutters, you just have to be patient. You just have to. Some people are very articulate. They really are eloquent. They have this gift of concision that most of us don't, and I am particularly lacking. And I think we just sort of have to be patient and kind to one another. And hopefully a person, when you indulge them and let them go on, they deliver the goods. And I think obviously I deliver the goods often enough that people indulge me, but not always. But sometimes I screw up badly. But enough of the time, I think it pays off.
I don't think you screw up.
Okay, well, no, I plenty of times when I do. But with respect to sort of civility in the great debate, well, obviously one aspect of civility is sort of letting people finish, letting them talk, because everyone wants to be heard, right? So it's important that you try to let people finish, and I'm not particularly patient. I interrupt people too, so I'm not trying to suggest I'm better in this respect. And I'm definitely not. But with respect to sort of civility in discourse and telling people to F off and stuff like that, there's a number of reasons why I don't do that. First of all, in the Great Debate, we're dealing with people who are secular versus religious for the most part, and a lot of religious people are very preoccupied, are very scrupulous about language. They see the use of four-letter words as a moral issue, and I don't want to be dismissed just because I use the F word. Right?
But that's kind of funny. No,
it's not that I think that there's anything wrong with that kind of talk. I mean, people who know me in Hangouts where it's just a bunch of like-minded people, and I don't think anyone's going to be offended or disregard me because I swear. I mean, I have sort of blue-collar roots, and I sort of swear like a sailor if in the right context. But in a more public context where I know that what I'm saying is being broadcast to an audience that I don't know who's going to be listening, I'm very careful about my words and what I say and what I don't say, because I just don't want to be dismissed and disregarded simply because I used those words.
No, but that's a funny.
I agree with that because I mean, this is, I'm in a room full of atheists, so you guys are gonna be like, boo. But when I worked at church. Shut up! But when I worked at church, I half of our church community was Middle Eastern, right? And so I worked in a church where I was the youth director and stuff. And I don't mind tattoos. I don't think tattoos are a bad thing. I like them. I think they're art. I don't have a single tattoo because in certain cultures, tattoos are just immediately a write-off and offensive, especially if you're a woman. Now, that was because of the audience that I was working with, right? Like if I had an exposed tattoo, it would have bothered them. So I get not wanting to swear because you're bringing offense to your words. So if you decide what you have to share is of worth, but you know that there's something culturally that's going to bar that worth and people from hearing what is of worth, yeah, you can kind of change that, and you wouldn't lose integrity for that. You just have to decide what's worth it for you. Is it worth it for you to do that or not?
Well, I'm as an English person, God. Okay, I'm going to try and say this as politely as possible and still use swear words at the same time. That's a load of bullshit. Okay. In England, we use swear words like we say hello. I mean, America is a weird place looking in as an English person.
It's not just America. There are a lot of people, and even in your own country, there are going to be people who take umbrage at that kind of and dismiss you and disregard you.
I'm gonna tell you, they are in the minority. Of course
they're in the minority, but presumably you want them to listen to you as well, right?
Yeah, but they still will listen. But the fact that they recognize why we use the English language is because we actually made the English language. The English language is
then use better words.
That is such a genetic fallacy. I come from a culture that concocted this language. Therefore, we're better at using it.
I'm sorry.
It's a genetic fallacy.
No, the fallacy is that you don't understand the fact that we came up with this thing called Monty Python and other crazy comedy shows.
I don't think you have any lessons.
No,
Doctor Who wins.
No, we use the English language to the benefit of expression. Okay. Now, when
that's such a cunt thing to say.
Yeah, exactly it is, right? Now, when we speak to each other, right? No, this is the honest truth. When we speak to each other, we can say, "Oh, fucking hell, good morning," right? Nobody would take that even remotely as some kind of insult. It's just an expression of how one feels. The most used swear word, I guess, in the English language is the word fuck, right? Because it's so versatile.
You know what I hear, Sty? I hear from you, it doesn't bother me, so why does it bother you? That's all I hear from you. I mean, this is actually my hang-up with the UK here on G+. You guys are the most forceful, rude source of anti-theism here.
Yeah, well,
and because you're just like cunt, and because it doesn't offend you, it shouldn't offend me, right?
No,
right?
it offends
I don't
you
like that you
because
said cunt so many times.
you're not
Right.
you're not used to how we speak, right? I'm just acknowledging the fact that exactly what Ozymandias said. If you want to approach a certain conversation or a certain situation, it would be probably
I have to
better
be
not to.
culturally sensitive to your
Well,
use of the word
I
cunt,
would like to just
but you
finish.
won't be
I
culturally
would
sensitive
like
to
to
my sensitivity to the word.
well, I would like to just finish my statement
Yeah,
before
let him finish.
I want to go after him.
Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, as Ozymandias stated, if you have a certain conversation with somebody, maybe it's better to forego this action of being who you are and what you're used to get over the message that is more conducive to a different audience. And I understand exactly what Ozymandias says, because I've had to, I would say, bite my lip in some conversations and not use profanity as other people understand it and go, well, I'm not going to do it. Right? I've did it with Ozymandias. I've did it with Christopher Mouty, and we've had good conversations without the use of profanity, and that makes maybe for a better conversation. But the way I speak is normal for most people in the UK because we don't treat swear words as naughty words. Just saying.
Let's go to Helena, and then I think Ozzy wants to make another point, one more point about the Great Debate Discourse.
Okay, so quickly, I probably disagree with Stuy's conclusion that all of the UK doesn't see swear words as ineffective or anything like that. But I do think that the Americans are more Puritan about swear words. However, the thing I wanted to say was that I think all of us should make a special case out of Stuy, and I think that we should grant that that is his thing, right? And he has content, even though it's full of cunt this and cunt that.
I don't mean it in a bad way, though. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's
it's just
the thing, is that to me is
context.
plainly obvious, right? That every other word Stuy uses happens to be fuck or cunt or what all else he comes out of his mouth. It doesn't affect his genuineness, right? He's not using it in any other way than part of his expression.
No,
Wait, hold on.
Stuy does like to get on the skin. Beep boop bop boop beep. Stuy's bored, and
No,
Stuy, you would
no,
yes,
wait,
yes,
hold
you
on,
attacked
hold
my
on.
sexuality, and
No,
then you attacked.
No,
So
look,
I'm just saying,
that's
like, you do
got,
it to sister
hold on a
sometimes.
minute, hold on, and be fair, Holly.
That's
Okay,
fair.
no, don't bring that up as if I ever swore. I'm not swearing at you, as exactly what Helen just said. I'm sorry, exactly what Helen just said. I speak this way, okay, because it's normal for me to speak this way. Other people don't get offended how I speak in England because it's a natural context. Like I said, we can say, "Oh my God, fuck you," in the morning time, and it would just like be normal. Okay.
You know me. I'm not somebody that dings swear words all the time like some of the other Christians. I really don't care.
Look,
It's
I
just
don't
when
care if
it's
Christian
directed
or
at a
not,
person directly, constantly.
It's how we use language in the United Kingdom is not the same as America. Just grow up. It's
Yeah,
got
but
nothing to do with your
sometimes-
sexuality. I couldn't care about your sexuality. I brought that up in context of your position on homophobia at that point. It's got nothing to do with me swearing. I speak the way I
No,
speak.
you were
It's got
bored
nothing
and
to
wanted
do.
to start a fight.
No,
Come on.
listen.
So I want to just make a really quick
okay.
literary recommendation real quick, and then we can move to a different subject, and this might actually help. So, has anyone ever read Me Talk Pretty One Day?
Oh yeah.
Oh my
Well,
God.
I'm actually seeing
oh
him
my
on
God,
Monday.
he's so
Wait,
hilarious.
Helena, I'm seeing him on Monday.
Oh, he's just incredible. Although now that he's getting older, he's got different concerns, right? But still, there's a chapter about his own brother that is just so funny, and I think that it speaks to this actual issue. So look it up.
No.
No?
Sorry. No, sorry. I didn't mute myself. Sorry. I apologize for that.
Anyway, that's all. So maybe
Okay.
everyone could go read that chapter, and then we'll all come away from it, and maybe we'll be able to have this discussion, in a different way. And so with that, maybe we could move on.
Yeah, Ozzy wanted to make one more point about about the discourse.
After that, could I answer a question somebody put here on the event?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Ozzy. I'm sorry. Did Ozzy get muted again?
Sorry, I've got this new microphone. I forget that I muted myself on the microphone and not using the Hangout function. Sometimes people have objected that I sort of am not sufficiently aggressive with some people. It seems to me that I'm plenty aggressive in my arguments, and I hold strongly to my positions for the sake of argument sometimes, and I'm perfectly willing to attack another person's position and argue quite forcefully. But I don't get all sort of amped up and emotional and stuff like that. Now, part of it is that's just philosophical training. You do this for a living, or you aspire to be a philosopher, and you take this on as a kind of value to be a little bit more distant from your beliefs and to consider objections against yours at sort of at more arm's length. That's just sort of something that comes with practice. The more you do it, the easier it gets, and it can look like you're just kind of. I mean, I've sort of been accused of being kind of bloodless, but people who know me, I think, know that I'm actually a fairly passionate, hot-blooded fellow, but as anybody else is, I'm no different that way. But when it comes to certain kinds of discussions, philosophical discussions, it's easier for me to keep my own positions at arm's length and not get too emotionally invested. That's something I think there's an ideal to strive for, though. I mean, people, I respond well when you sort of, keep your cool, and this practice of reflecting what is being, thrown out at you, I think is actually a bad strategy. I would caution anyone against sort of taking on that slogan and saying, well, whatever people dish out to me, that's what I reflect back at them, because then the conversations that you have are being held hostage by the other person's degree of civility or incivility. You are really that other person's creature. You are at their mercy. Your level of civility and rationality is going to be entirely dictated by their level of civility. You're never going to sort of elevate the discourse that way, and you're going to find yourself having conversations that you don't want to have. And I have this little slogan that I use that we all get the conversations we deserve. If you don't like the kinds of conversations that you're having, and you find that all the conversations are terrible and frustrating and stuff like that, well, look at the common denominator, right? It's always you in the conversation. And if you think you're having fruitful and productive conversations, you can pat yourself on the back. And if you think you're consistently having crappy conversations and only rarely do you have a productive one, then maybe you're the common denominator here. And there's something you can change, because you can't change how the other person is going to conduct themselves. You can only control how you conduct yourself. But there really are effects in other people based on how you react. And so I think if you're kind with people, if you're gentle, and if you are respectful, that engenders a similar generosity of spirit in the other person. It makes it very hard for them to be rude, and it makes it likelier that they will be more respectful, and you'll have a better conversation. Now, it doesn't always work. There are people who are recalcitrant and stubborn, but there's a nice kind of political consequence of that, and that is that when you keep your cool and they're losing their heads, everyone in the room sees who's in control of themselves and who is not. Everyone sees who is the emotional one, and that's why I think it's a good strategy to sort of to try to be gentle and patient and kind and charitable and generous of spirit when you're.
Well, I'm gonna kind of disagree. I understand your premise there, but I'm gonna disagree because of one person. His name's Matt Bell. If you come up against this guy, he will insult you to the maximum, and the only way to get around this shit, literally, is to give as good as he gets, or as good as he gives, right? Because I'm sorry, Helena. I've destroyed them about 4 times on my own channel, on my own thing. And the reason why I destroy him is because he thinks by dominating, I guess, in the sweating department, he thinks he can get away with it. Now, he comes up against a Scouser, right? I don't know if you know what a Scouser is. I'm pretty sure you can look it up.
Someone who Scouse.
It's a Liverpudlian, isn't there, or something like that?
Exactly, right? So someone like me, who's not going to sit back and let him dominate in that regard and can swear just as well as he can, right? I'm not saying it's appropriate, because I'm going to agree with Ozzy Madness. I don't think it is, but I think if you're dealing with certain types of people, you can have a disagreement and be civil. I think that's the best way to go. But if certain people think that's their trait, then I in my opinion, I can give as good as they give in that regard. So I think it depends on who you are discussing certain topics with in that regard. Because I can have discussions with lots of people and not say a peep about swear words as long as they give me the content to their arguments in that regard. But some people be quiet.
Sorry, you keep going.
No, I'll finish.
I was just going to say that some people can abuse you without ever using a single swear word. That also happens, and we see that. We see that from the clown car posse. They will abuse you. They will be uncharitable without ever saying a single swear word. So that happens as well, and I think that should be acknowledged.
Okay. Let's go ahead and let Drag answer the question, and then take the hangout down or the on air.
Yeah, I just so happened to look at the stream, and what the fuck, Scully had sent me a question. He says, could you please ask Drag if his view on death is because he likes the idea of controlling his destiny? And that's a really interesting question. I was honestly trying to ponder while I was in the bathroom as to why the thought of my own death was the most exhilarating feeling and thought I've ever had. And for me, I just kind of going back to the moment, for me, it was the idea of everything in life up to that point culminated to this one last event. So if there was ever a time to, pull out all the stops, to give it your all, and all the kind of cliche things, this was that time. And so the thought of you are running a marathon for such a long time, simply to cross this finish line and that's it, you are going to put 110% of whatever it is that you have left into this one single solitary event. And not too many people can say that they've done that. It's something that you really have, it changes you afterwards, because now you kind of left unfulfilled. And that's, I know a lot of other people who are in my position feel as though that our lives are just so trivial now because we can never get back to that level of excitement. And that's what actually increases the level of risk-taking for veterans, because you want to feel that exhilaration. The things that people find exciting it pales in comparison to what you've once done. And so that to me is just kind of the condition of it happens. That is now you. There's no going back, and it's so hard to describe that I could tell you that you could rappel from the Empire State Building and then think about what you could do for the rest of your life that was not rappelling from the Empire State Building, and you won't be able to give me something that's comparable to that. So I hope that kind of answers that question.
Okay, so thank you, Drag, for that. That's I've heard you talk about that before, and that's a really it's hard for those of us who have not been in that situation to really wrap our heads around what that must have been like. That's crazy. Thank you to Helena, and thank you everybody else. That was I really enjoyed our discussion, Helena. I thought it went really well, and just enjoyed getting to know you, and hopefully other people find that useful too, and enjoyed the exchange. So,
well, I sincerely had a lot of fun. It was really great talking with you.
It was really eye-opening, actually. So,
oh God.
Can I, before this closes, can I ask one stupid question of Ozymandias, and this is in relation to Helena. Indulge me a little, Helena. Is morality objective or subjective, please? I know Helena's going to be like, oh my fucking God, why did he ask that question? But I think it's...
Can I just say, oh my fucking God, why did he ask that question?
There you go. So, Ozzy, if you want to give your perspective you know what, you can take as long as you fucking want, I hope. But in the sense of, I just want you to clarify that your position is X or whatever. So, yeah. If you don't mind, I would be very grateful. And yes, I'm asking for a little bit of time for that. So.
I will be. Well, no, Bert wants to end the hangout, but I will be brief. The answer is yes. And if you want to know some of my reasons and in what sense I think that morality is objective, you should go over to Helena Handbaskit's channel. She's just started producing some content of her own with Hangouts, and we've had a couple of discussions already. She and I had a discussion on Nadia's Hangout about this kind of thing. That's mirrored on my own channel. My own most recent video is a discussion that Helen and I had about this kind of stuff. And then she and I have since had 2 discussions on her channel, 2 Hangouts about the question of morality as I see it, and virtue ethics, and the objectivity of morality. So if anyone's curious about my views and what I mean when I say that I think morality is objective, I would invite them to go there so that I don't have to repeat it all here.
Okay, well that's fine, and I'm grateful for that little short summary. Can I wouldn't say challenge you, but can I well I think Helena in a handbasket would be a good mod in that regards. Can me and you go toe to toe on why I think it's subjective and why you think it's objective, if you don't mind? And it's scheduled to be whenever, but I would like to challenge you on that notion.
Yeah, I'd be happy to discuss it with you, but I'm not interested in anything like a formal moderated debate. If you want to have a conversation about it sometime, we can do that. But I would invite you first. I would invite you first to hear what I had to say on her channel, so to give you some sense.
Well, I just want to give Helena the honorary. I mean, it's not supposed to be moderated, but if that would be the case, then I would like Helena to host it. So that would be, I guess, the moderation part of it. But yeah, me and you can be civil about it and all that good stuff. But I fundamentally disagree, and I want to see why your position is objective in that regard. So that would be interesting.
Maybe the best way to proceed there would be simply just post some comments under the video where she and I discussed it, and we'll be able to address you there if you want.
Well, that's cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much for everybody coming by, and thank you again, Helena. So.